Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopidana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopidana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Radharana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Radharana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopidana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Radharana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Kachara Sadhara Sadasi Siman Shri Swami Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivinoda Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Nitai Gaur Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th canto. Chapter 11, text. Okay. Just now coming. Gunanuraktam Vyasanaya Chantoho Kshemaya Nairgunyam Ato Manaha Syat Yata Pradipo Kritavartim Ashnan Shikaha Saduma Bhajati Hi Anyada Svam Padam Tata Gunakarma Anubadham Vratir Manaha Shrete Anyatra Tattvam Gunanuraktam Vyasanaya Janto Kshemaya nairgunyamato manasya. Yata pradipo kritavarti mashnan. Shika saduna pachati anyadasvam. Padam tata guna karma anubadham. Vrittir manakshrayate nyatra tattvam. That should help. Gunanuraktam yasanaya janto. Kshemaya nairgunyamato manaksya. Ita pradipo kritavarti mashnan. Shika saduma bachati anyadasvam. Padam tata guna karmanubhaddham. Vrittir manakshrayate nyatra tattvam. Nirakta samaya janto. Badam tata guna karmanubhadham. Vrittir manashrayate nyatra tattvam. Gunanuraktam vyasanaya janto. Shemaya nairgunyamato manaksya. Yanyadasvam. Padam tata guna karmanubhaddham. Manakshayate datta tattvam. Gunanuraktam yasanaya janto. Da pradipo gritavarti mashnyam. Kadana yanyadasvam. Guna karmanubhaddham. Vrittir manashrayate nyatra tattvam. Ladies? Anybody? Gunanuraktam vyasanaya janto. Maya nairgunyamato manaksya. Ita pradipo gritavarti mashnan. Ika saduma bachati anyadasvam. Padam tata guna karma anubhaddham. Vrittir manakshirayate nyatra tattvam. Guna anuraktam, being attached to the material modes of nature. Vyasanaya, for the conditioning in material existence. Jantoho, of the living entity. Kshemaya, for the ultimate welfare. Nargunyam, being unaffected by the material modes of nature. Ato, thus. Manaha, the mind. Syat, becomes. Yata, as much as. Pradipaha, a lamp. Grita vartim, a wick within clarified butter. Ashnan, burning. Shikaha, the flame. Sadhunaha, with smoke. Bhajati, enjoys. He, certainly. Anyada, otherwise. Swam, its own original. Padam, position. Tata, so. Guna karma anubaddham, bound by the modes of nature and the reactions of material activities. Vrittihi, various engagements. Manaha, the mind. Shrayate, takes shelter of. Anyatra, otherwise. Tattvam, its original condition. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. When the living entity's mind becomes absorbed in the sense gratification of the material world, it brings about his conditioned life and suffering within the material situation. However, when the mind becomes unattached to material enjoyment, it becomes the cause of liberation. When the flame in a lamp burns the wick improperly, the lamp is blackened. But when the lamp is filled with ghee and is burning properly, there is bright illumination. Similarly, when the mind is absorbed in material sense gratification, it causes suffering. And when detached from material sense gratification, it brings about the original brightness of Krishna consciousness. Purport. It is therefore concluded that the mind is the cause of material existence and liberation also. Everyone is suffering in this material world because of the mind. It is therefore proper to train the mind or to cleanse the mind from material attachment and engage it fully in the Lord's service. This is called spiritual engagement. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One who engages in full devotional service, who does not fall down in any circumstance, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. Bhagavad Gita, 14th chapter, text 26. We should engage the mind fully in Krishna conscious activities. Then it will be the cause of our liberation, for our returning home back to Godhead. However, if we keep the mind engaged in material activities for sense gratification, it will cause continuous bondage and will make us remain in this material world in different bodies, suffering the consequences of our different actions. Gunanuraktam vyasanaya janto kshimaya nargunyamato manoksva syat ta pradipo kritavarti mashnanchika saduma bachati anyadasvang padang tata guna karmanu baddham britir manakshayate nyatra tattvam. When the living entity's mind becomes absorbed in the sense gratification of the material world, it brings about his conditioned life and suffering within the material situation. However, when the mind becomes unattached to material enjoyment, it becomes the cause of liberation. When the flame in a lamp burns the wick improperly, the lamp is blackened. But when the lamp is filled with ghee and is burning properly, there is bright illumination. Similarly, when the mind is absorbed in material sense gratification, it causes suffering. And when detached from material sense gratification, it brings about the original brightness of Krishna consciousness. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Ginanjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim yat kripadam aham vande Sri Gurudinataranam Paramananda Maravam Sri Chaitanyeshwaram Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. So here, Jat Bharat is continuing his instruction to Maharaj Shurhugana, and there's many verses about the mind. And he's explaining in today's verse that the living entity's mind can either be absorbed in sense gratification or in devotional service. So we got these two choices, basically. Blue pill, red pill. Which one are you going to take? That's always the choice. That option is always given. Now, we may say, but I need some sense gratification in order to survive. I have to keep this body alive. Yes, that is a fact, but actually it's quite minimal. The body is quite frugal. It can maintain with very little. Yet the mind has, how many demands are there in the mind? Approximately? Unlimited, yes. About 57,000 thoughts in a day. What about this? What about that? What about that? What about that? What about that? And it's usually hankering and lamentation. Ichcha dvesha samutvena dvandva mohena bharata. The mind is always caught between hankering and lamenting. I want, oh, it didn't work out so great last time. Has this ever happened to you? Think, I've got it figured out. I know how to navigate in this world. But then, things don't go my way. So I lament. So the mind is caught between hankering and lamentation. Here the example that is given is of a wick in a lamp. That when it is improper, when it is not having the good fuel, then there will be soot, there will be smoke, there will be a very dim light. But when there is ghee and the wick is properly situated, then the lamp can burn and shine brightly. So in a similar way, if our mind is properly engaged in devotional service, then the effulgence, the brightness will be there. And otherwise we'll be covered like a dim lamp that is just giving out smoke. And I was distributing books on Telegraph, just at UC Berkeley, and one student, I asked him the usual questions, and he said, "You already asked me yesterday." Now they wear masks, you know, so you can't really tell that much. But he had a beard, and he's a Muslim actually, and he said, "I'm a Muslim, but you're bright, you're effulgent. I want what you have. Can you give me what you have?" And I said, "Yeah, take a book." So that brightness is there when we are engaged in devotional service. Srila Prabhupada often commented that his disciples were called bright-faced. Whereas in the material world, most people, they're quite pale. They're quite, what's the word? Morose, yes. They're quite morose. Because when you can't enjoy, then you become morose. You lament, and you got the blues. Have you ever had the blues? every day, right? It's a constant. It's a given. It's the baseline. The blues is the baseline. But in Bhakti, there is only good news because Krishna is all attractive. He's amazing. How you like that purple dress on Radha Giridhari? Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra, and Gaurnitai. It's amazing, right? It's terrific. You go like, wow. Wow. No longer morose. Huh? My Lord, He is amazing. He's beautiful. Now, there is attraction and repulsion. The mind always works in these extremes, right? Accepting and rejecting, accepting and rejecting. That's why social media is so popular, because it's the platform of the mind. Like, don't like, like, So that's the mind. So, but attraction is stronger than repulsion. So if we try to just work with aversion, to negate, to stay away, like the impersonalists, the yogis, the Mayavadis, who try to detach, they try to disengage with the material world through the process of neti. I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm also not the other thing. But it does not put them in a position of strength, because they're not taking shelter, they're not actually engaging. So we have to engage. We have to engage. So where is our attraction? Where is our absorption? That is the question. Is my absorption with Krishna? Am I focused on Krishna? Or am I still hankering and lamenting? Just take inventory on a daily basis. How much hankering and lamenting is going on? And how much absorption in Krishna consciousness is going on? So the more we are absorbed in Krishna consciousness, the more we'll become bright and satisfied. Because Krishna consciousness is the original position of the living entity. And people are looking for that. They're looking for that absorption. They're looking for that happiness that is beyond the sensory experience. Because sensory experience is quite limited. It is quite limited. Because this body is limited. The senses are limited. There's only that much you can do with this machine. But on a spiritual platform, there is no limitation. This morning I was reading, Maria Soda was chasing after Krishna with a stick in her hand. And Krishna allowed himself to be bound by the love of his devotee. When he saw that his mother was struggling so hard and she was perspiring and flowers were falling from her hair, and he said, okay, all right, okay, fine. You can catch me now. All right, you can tie me up. It's going to be a little difficult, but you can try. So Krishna allows himself to be bound by the love of his devotee. That is the beauty of Bhakti. That the devotee is not trying to become God. He's becoming more than God. He can bind God with his loving affection. But that has to be pure. Anya bhilashita shunyam jnana karmadyanavritam anukulyena krishna nushilanam bhakti ruttama. Unless we go beyond karma and gyan, we will not be able to bind Krishna. If we're still on the intellectual platform or on a platform of the mechanics of this world, of doing good and bad deeds and keeping a spreadsheet of our punya and papa and making sure we always get ahead, we always stay slightly in positive. That's what they teach you, right? Never let your debit account go into minus, right? Otherwise, your card may be repossessed. So, and of course, the conditioned soul thinks, but what's so wrong with karma? Who would refuse a little bit of money? Like, I don't need a lot, but just a little bit. Have you ever thought if you had a little bit more money, your bhakti would be enhanced? Has this ever happened to any one of us? Yeah.
I could do so many things for Krishna if I had $1 million.
Yeah. But then the problem is $1 million is nothing. $1 million in San Diego gets you what? Does he get you one of those shacks here? I don't think so. Not really, right? You're not there. You may get a place where to park your bicycle and your surfboard, but not much more than that. So good is never good enough. Then we think, oh, whoa, what about a little smartness? What about a little gyan? A little knowledge? That could do well if I just be a little smarter. I could actually remember some of these verses and some of these concepts, and it would really enhance my bhakti, right? No. Gajendra was an elephant. Hanuman was a monkey. But they pleased the Lord by their devotion, by their sincerity, by their attraction. So what is our absorption in Krishna consciousness? That will create a vortex that will actually attract other people's attention. And they will become intrigued. They will become enamored. They will become convinced by your absorption. Now you may say a materialist is pretty absorbed. They're working hard. They're out there as we speak in traffic, hacking away on their machines. Yet there's a difference of just manipulating material energy and being engaged in the sublime process of bhakti yoga. I have a friend he was in Shanghai, biggest train station in the world. Shanghai train station. And for almost 10 years, he stayed there in that city and distributed books there. Very dangerous. CCTV everywhere. Cops, security, military, all kinds of people. He would get arrested countless times while distributing books there. And they always ask him, what are you doing? Why are you doing what you're doing? And he said, I have a Chinese wife. I have to make money. I bought these books on the market. I'm trying to sell them. I have to make money. And they're like, okay, he's okay, you know. He just has to make money like everybody else here. And they let him go. So one time he was distributing and one man asked him, so what are you trying to do? Sometimes people ask you, right? What are you trying to do here? And he said, I'm trying to spread this ancient science, this philosophy of the Vedas, to help people, to help this country improve. The man looked through the book, and he gave him $50,000 right there in the train station. He sponsored 100 sets. And then the devotee, because the devotee said he wants to put sets of these books into all the libraries of the universities. Then the devotee actually sent the sets to the libraries, and he got pictures taken, and he presented this man with the receipts and the pictures and the testimonials. And the man sponsored another 700 sets. He said 100 sets for Taiwan, 100 sets for Hong Kong, 100 sets for Mongolia, 100 sets for here, for there. Chinese businessman. He gave him 400 grand for sponsoring sets of books. So there's no lack of resources. You ever wondered how many zeros are there in a trillion or in a billion? You hear all these, you know, virtual amounts. It's kind of beyond. It's like asankhya. It's more than we can conceive of. So there is no scarcity except Krishna consciousness. Because even though there are people who are fabulously rich and wealthy, but the thought of devotional service will not arise in their mind. It will not arise in their mind. I was in Santa Cruz, the home of the homeless vegan, and I met one gentleman who wore all the right kind of clothes, and he was very well done. And turns out he owns 5 mobile gas stations, and he's chasing sports cars and other things. And I said, just give $1. And he said, no, I can't do. I cannot do. As a principle, I cannot give. How unfortunate. How unfortunate. Huh? That is the position of the conditioned soul in the material world. Why? Because of a deep aversion to Krishna and the process of devotional service. So this idea of giving to God or giving to a spiritual cause, it is very troublesome. It is very unappealing for the living entity. So when we go out to share this message with others, we get realization because we can see the appreciation in other people. And that is oftentimes greater than the appreciation that we may have. I heard from a very close friend the story that he was a brahmachari in Brazil in the early 80s. And his spiritual master was sick in the United States, so he asked him to come and serve him. So he went to the American embassy in Buenos Aires to get a visa. And he went in pant and shirt, and he got refused. He got rejected because they thought just another Latino who tries to escape to the U.S. So the next day he went again to the embassy in Adori, and he demanded to speak to the ambassador. So the lady came. She was young, fairly young, mid-30s, early 40s. And she asked, what do you want? And he said, yesterday I was here and I was rejected by one of your less intelligent bureaucrats. You get the idea who it is. But little did he know that I'm trying to serve my spiritual master who's in the United States and he needs my help. I can bring him back to health. I have served him everywhere in Latin America. So she said, so you're not going to stay there? He said, no, we're missionaries. We always travel. We come, we go. It's required for service. So she paused for a while. She said, okay, I'll give you the visa. And then as she got up from the table, she kind of leaned over and she said, and this is the Prabhupada moment, so you have to pay attention. She said, I read Prabhupada's Gita. Just kind of under her breath. Because, you know, there's Marines and diplomats and other people. She's the top dog, you know, she's the top person in the country representing the United States. So she said, I read Prabhupada's Gita. So you may ask yourself, well, why did she ask all these questions? Why do people ask you, so you're a monk, huh? So what do you do? And what don't you do? Why are people asking all these questions? Why did she have to ask these questions? Because she had to make sure that he is who he says he is. In a similar way, people ask us all these questions because they want to make sure that we are who we say we are. Huh? So what is my level of absorption? What is my level of attraction? Huh? That really depends on my resolve. How much do I dedicate myself to this process of bhakti? Is it just like a side thing, like the noise from the ventilation? You know? Is that ventilation? Yeah. It's just kind of going on, right? It's just kind of a hum. Is the mantra just some kind of a lull, some kind of a hum that's just there somewhere? Huh? Or am I actually fully focused? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Well, we can check our lamp and see, is it giving off soot and smoke and very dim light? Or is it burning clean? And is it actually effulgent? That is one way. to see. Bhakti pareshanubhavo viraktiranyatrascha chaishatrika ekakala patradyama. Help me out, sadhus. Yatashnatashyus tushti pushti kshut abhayanugasam. So, we can see bhakti paresh anubhava, viraktir. There has to be detachment from the material objects of sense gratification. How much am I still attached to the things of this world? And how much am I attached to Krishna? When we practice bhakti naturally, like by eating food, what happens? Tushti, pushti, and kshut. There is taste, there is nourishment, and there is satisfaction. And when that taste, nourishment, and satisfaction happens, in or out, when that happens, then naturally we become detached from everything else. Just like when you had a good meal. You're like, I'm good. Even when people offer you something, you say, no, 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 I'm good. Like if you're on an airplane, I know people don't go on airplanes anymore these days, but if you were to be on an airplane and the stewardess comes with a little trolley and says, veg or non-veg, then what do you say? Can I see the veg? No. You say, I'm good. Thank you. I'm good. Thank you for the offer, but I'm good. I brought my own. I'm okay. Because this whole idea of, oh, let me see. Let me see what's there. Have you ever thought, let me see what's there? And then you got stuck. Something stuck to you. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. We should engage the mind fully in Krishna conscious activities. We can see Krishna, we can chant Krishna's name, we can offer Krishna fruits, flowers, the fruit of our labor. But most importantly, we can offer Krishna love, bhakti. And that is what will attract Krishna. In fact, so much so that Krishna allows himself to be bound by the love of his devotee. That is the greatness of this process of bhakti. And that is the extraordinary kindness of Krishna, that he allows himself to be tied up by the love of his devotees. Hare Krishna. We have time for reflections or questions?
And questions.
You got the mic.
Okay. You quoted this verse, Bhakti Pareshanobhavo Viraktir, Anyata Trisha Ekakala. The third line says Prabhadya Manasa. So the key is, this is describing one who's surrendered. And the first line talks about three different things happen simultaneously if one actually surrenders. Bhakti, the feeling, is there. Para Isha Anubhava, the manifestation of Krishna in the heart, the experience of the Lord, and then the vairagya from everything else. And as you probably quoted, you quoted what Prabhupada always quotes, first line but plus one word, the vairagya cha. So the question is, in our practice of bhakti yoga, we're trying to surrender, but it's a process, and that we are describing that the mind is becoming attracted to this or that, and then diverted, and then we have to bring it back, and the whole process is to help us. So, do we find in even the earlier stages of bhakti some of this phenomenon also? In other words, tushti pushti chadapayo. That the apayo means it's gone. The hunger is gone. So the tushti corresponds to the pleasure, the pleasure of bhakti. And the pushti is the nourishment, describing how the experience of God is nourished. So isn't it true that even beginning in devotional service, taking it seriously, of course, and practicing, but not being completely surrendered, completely perfect, that we also feel some of these things, and then it may wane, may go along. Isn't that what helps us to advance?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for completing the the translation. Yes, yet if we don't keep ourselves immersed continuously, we may run a little low, and then the weeds will again sprout up and try to choke the creeper of bhakti. So we got to make sure that we keep ourselves nicely engaged and saturated in Krishna Katha. And avoid the offenses, yes. And the root cause of all the offenses is inattentiveness while chanting. We saw a lot of dive bombers this morning here. There was a lot of... So, attraction. Work with the attraction. Krishna is a person. He's there in his name. How much am I putting my heart into it? Am I leaning into my japa? Or am I just clicking through the register? Other points? Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
1 second. We'll be with you in a minute.
Yes, I can wait. No problem.
Yes, Bob.
Thank you for taking my question. What if someone has a strong desire to detach and surrender, but they have many possessions, property, 50 years plus worth of acquisition? How does one start the process of detachment and surrender?
Thank you for your honesty. First, again, is attraction. You can't just detach unless you have something better. Because if you want to give something up, you gotta have something. Otherwise, you'd be left with nothing. Isn't that the question of Arjuna? You'd be like a riven cloud. You'd be not here, not there. I won't be a transcendentalist, and I won't be a materialist. I'll be a failure in all realms. That is pretty frightening prospect, right? So, you gotta you gotta really develop your attraction, your Krishna consciousness, so you can truly renounce. Otherwise, it'd be superficial. How many of us have joined this movement and we gave away our skateboard or our bicycle or whatever it was, you know, our collection of LPs. But then when we came, after a while, we again started collecting and getting stuff back because it was not full renunciation, because there was no absorption. There was no real saturation of the heart with Krishna consciousness. So you got to have that higher taste, then you can give up the lower taste. And also by philosophical understanding that all the toys go back on the shelf. I'm only here for a few afternoons. I'm a custodian. I'm not the controller and enjoyer. I've been given these assets for serving Krishna. You can have the whole world, the whole universe, if you engage it in Krishna's service. And it will not be to your detriment. In fact, it will be enhancing your devotional service. So it's not that assets are bad. It's a matter of our attitude. What do we do with it? So don't think, I just got to walk away from everything. Prabhupada made that example of the man who gives all his property to his family, and he goes to Vrindavan and tells them, just send me 500 rupees every month, you know. I'll pick it up at the post office, and I'll be very renounced. So he gives everything to his family, and then so-called renunciation. No, give it all to Krishna. And that means if you can engage it in Krishna's service, fine. If you can't, if it's a distraction, if it's a detriment, then you may have to distance yourself. Yes, Vijay Prabhu. It's okay. Any last points?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Rama.
May I?
You may.
Yes, Navina, Prabhu, thank you very much. You're very kind. The quote from the purport related to the verse you chose for today, 5:11:8, is as follows. It is the very last part of the last sentence. Quote, suffering the consequences of our different actions, end quote. So based on this quote, my question is as follows. Is it that there is any type of action where I would find myself not suffering the consequences of my actions?
Yes, if you engage in bhakti, then you won't, because it's not karma. When you engage in bhakti, you do everything for Krishna's pleasure. So that is transcendental activity. So you won't be implicated in success or failure. That's the message of the Bhagavad Gita. You do your duty, but you do it for me. Don't be attached to the fruits of your actions. And in this way, this will free you. By the way, are you a lawyer?
No, I'm a teacher.
A teacher, okay, because you're very meticulous. You're very thorough. You always quote.
Yes,
you always quote.
My zodiac sign is Virgo.
Oh, okay, got it. Now it makes sense. Now I understand. Okay, thank you for
Sharing your sign with us.
yes, exactly.
And let's not forget that the zodiac sign of Srila Prabhupada was also Virgo.
Okay.
Once you pull this ring, it'll go for a while.
Okay. All right. We got one last one here.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Navina Prabhu. So you're talking about how we find the higher taste, and that's how we lose the lower taste, and we can be more attentive, be more absorbed in bhakti. But how does one, I guess, persist in finding that higher taste? How does one know that they're attaining the higher taste? And also, how can we do it?
Well, you just got to keep at it, you know? You just keep swinging at it. You have to, you just have to be steady in your practice. And initially it may be choppy, there's some ups and downs, but that's why we have these centers. We have the association of devotees, because they will wake you up, tell you, Jeev Jago, Jeev Jago. That's why it's such a blessing, because if you're somewhere doing your own thing, then you may or may not practice. Like we meet so many people, it's funny, and they say, I'm a this, I'm a that, you know, you fill in the blanks. And then I always ask them, so what's your practice? And they go, there's a practice? Isn't it funny? Like you're a XYZ, and what's your practice? Oh, there's a practice? Yes, there's a practice. The bhakti practice. So initially it may be a little bumpy road, but eventually it will stabilize. And the more we give it our level best, the more we give it all we got on a daily basis, we'll come to a point where we will have this resolve that, you know, Krishna's mine and I'm Krishna's. What's it called? Mamata. I'm Krishna's and Krishna's mine. One time, Guru Gauranga Prabhu, he brought one politician in Geneva to Srila Prabhupada. And, you know, the devotees were very eager to bring high caliber people to Prabhupada, because Prabhupada was very expert in talking to them about the science of Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada was very happy also to talk to these people. So the man came, Prabhupada was sitting there, and Srila Prabhupada asked him, any questions? And the man said no. So Prabhupada just took the harmonium and chanted Hare Krishna for at least 20 minutes. He just chanted Hare Krishna. And then he motioned to Guru Gauranga, give him some prasadam, give him some fruit. And the man left. I met a man on Market and Powell, and he looked at the book and he said, I met this man. And I said, very unlikely. He said, no, 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 I'm from New York. I was there in the late 60s. 26 2nd Avenue. They brought me up to his room, and I sat down. And the Swami was there, and he didn't say anything, and I didn't say anything. And it was perfect, because he understood that I understood that he understood. Now, if you're not from the 60s, you don't get this, okay? So,
A little chemical additive.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. A little spin. And anyway, finally, with a lot of cajoling, he took it, chant and be happy. Prabhupada didn't speak to him. Why? Because the guy was so full of himself that he couldn't hear Prabhupada. He had to wait for 50 years before he got a book, before he could hear Prabhupada. So sometimes we may be here in the temple and we, going through the motions, doing whatever it is that we're doing. But because there's so much noise in our multi-cineplex, in our little roadshow, that it's not really penetrating our consciousness. So then Krishna very mercifully, through material nature, will make some arrangements where he will rock our canoe a little bit, choppy waters, where we will actually become sincere and try to take shelter of Krishna. So that is Krishna's kindness, that is his mercy. So the devotee is welcoming the good times and the bad times. It's not that we're only here when there's festival, that we're fair weather devotees. But for the devotee, every day is a good day in Bhakti. So, thank you for your kind attention. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.